How's it going, everybody? So in this video, we're going to talk about the fallacy of this idea of being authentic as a human being. Okay, so this is basically the concept, I guess, of psychology, of being the authentic self, or being an authentic person, or living an authentic life. Okay. And I'm pretty sure the majority of people who know me know how I am, and I guess who they think I am. Most people would probably refer to me as an authentic person, somebody who just is generally, for the most part, as unfiltered as someone can possibly be, while still being relatively functional in practical society. Okay. Because it's kind of hard to just be like super transparent and open and authentic, while also being able to be effective and hold a job and, not end up in a sane asylum. So most people would probably claim that I'm an authentic human being. However, there is a lot of problems with most people's claim of being authentic, or really their goal of living an authentic life or being an authentic human being. And I actually find this idea of trying to be authentic as dysfunctional a lot of the time. A lot of people actually they identify as being authentic as kind of like a scapegoat or a excuse for a lack of self-development, a lack of growth, and a lack of groundedness, okay? The word authentic is a lot of times used as a way to excuse somebody from developing a certain area of their life, okay? And a lot of times, as comfortable as it may be, many people who claim to be authentic or identify as being authentic are very far from it, okay? Because there's certain areas of their life that they could probably do much better at, and they probably want to do much better at deep down inside, but they actually don't strive to develop that area. And they make all sorts of justifications for it. Usually being authentic is a justification for a lack of development in certain areas. And it's really hard to kind of like be honest about this, despite them usually claiming that, oh, I'm authentic, or it's time to be my true self, or I want to be authentic. Usually people are just fooling themselves. So let's actually start with the actual definition of authentic. Because a lot of people, especially these fluffy-ass people who claim to be authentic, and they're in all this like weird nonsense that really doesn't mean anything, like being spiritual or being, what are some other words? A good person or whatever. Like, a lot of these things are so subjective that they lose their meaning. They're highly nebulous terms, and the word authentic is extremely nebulous, which is a toxic type of label, actually. All right, so let's see. Authentic. First definition, of undisputed origin, genuine. Okay, so this is usually what people try to mean. So authentic, the definition of authentic just basically gives me a synonym, genuine. Okay, so now we got to look at, well, what's the definition of genuine? And people who use nebulous terms, like, generally don't know what the fuck they're really trying to say. They don't really use a specific definition. And when you actually ask them questions, like, well, what do you actually mean by authentic or whatever, then they just give a lot of really vague descriptions that still doesn't clarify it. So the definition of a genuine, truly what something is said to be, authentic, okay? So according to the definition of authenticity as being genuine, truly what something or someone is said to be, basically what that's saying is somebody who lives up to their idea of self, their idea of who they think they are, their self-image, okay? And this is a lot of times where this whole idea is flawed. So a lot of people, so first of all, identifying as authentic is in and of itself attaching yourself to a label putting yourself in a box, attaching yourself to a self-image. And if being authentic is being genuine, which is being truly what something is said to be, then that means somebody who's authentic is basically just living up to their own idea of who they think they are, their own idea of self, their own self-image, or living up to who other people think they are. And a lot of times, so if who you think you are has a lot of limitations that are self-imposed based on who you think you are, this can actually be a huge problem. And this is one of the very first problems that we run into with this idea of being authentic is its actual definition. And what a lot of people think they mean is really just an unhealthy attachment to their current kind of identity. Okay, and you have to understand who you think you are. Okay, who you identify as, the behaviors that are associated with who you think you are, the habits that you've built and who you're familiar with being already, your beliefs, if you believe in God, or you're atheist, or you believe in Buddha, or whatever it is, or if you identify as vegan, or a metalhead, or a rap person, or whatever. None of these are authentic. These are all just things that you identify as, okay? And you have to understand, all of these things are literally just patterns that you've kind of fallen into, based on your influences and, also, partly genetics and neurotransmitters and other things that kind of, mold your responses to your influences as you go through life. And a lot of times people have dysfunctional self-images, which is actually a primary cause of many mental illnesses, is a dysfunctional self-image. It's a lot of times why people fall into negative patterns of behavior, negative patterns of thought, and why a lot of people can't rise above their negative habits, such as not being able to eat healthier, exercise, or develop empathy in relationships and stuff like that, because we have dysfunctional self-images. For example, there's this I don't like this label either, like toxic masculinity. It really is so nebulous, it doesn't mean anything. And many people who all kind of can fall into this category of toxic masculinity, they may actually all have different causes, usually emotional trauma and identifying with dysfunctional self-image that all can cause this. But anyway, a big reason why a lot of men fall into this toxic masculinity, so to speak, is because of they're so attached to an image of who they think they are. Really, how authentic you want to be or how authentic you think you are is not really the problem here. It's not what we should be focusing on. It shouldn't be a goal, but rather how functional is my self-image or whatever it is that I'm identifying with. That is what we should worry about. If, for example, a lot of men, they identify as tough guys and they think they're being authentic and I've seen this all the time where guys I'm just real. I'm just authentic. I just speak my mind whenever I feel like it. If I tell you, fuck off and you're fucking stupid and this and that, don't hate me because I'm being real and I'm being authentic. Okay. And of course, a lot of these people who think, that they're being authentic and they think that they're a good person, this and that, they'll hear this and they'll say, well, that's not actually being authentic. That person is, whatever. They'll try to make it sound like that isn't actually being authentic. And it's well, where do you draw the line? Because, you're kind of just creating some weird nebulous idea of what you think is authentic instead of giving a tangible, measurable definition that we could actually build some kind of strategy based on. Truly what something is said to be. Okay, well, that's subjective, obviously, but that's the definition of authentic. If the definition of authentic is genuine, truly what something is said to be. Okay, so someone is said to be an asshole, and they live up to that. How valuable is it to be authentic when your authentic self is dysfunctional. Okay, so a lot of people, this whole idea of authenticity is just being natural, so to speak, without efforting their personality towards a certain way. And that is so dysfunctional, and I would say that's at the root cause of most people's problems and dysfunctions in life, okay? And in fact, the goal of psychology, the goal of having a therapist, of any kind of mental health work, if it's actually to be effective, is to address dysfunctional aspects of a human's psychology and of their self-image and their thought patterns and processes and their habits of behavior. All of that involves overcoming authentic parts of your personality that are negative, okay? So I have it raises a red flag anytime I hear somebody say identify as authentic or say you need to be more authentic. It's just because it's meaningless and it doesn't have a functional kind of definition. You should be more specific when you're trying to describe this. And we're going to get into how to, instead of being, if being authentic isn't really where it's at, then where is it at? Like, what should we do then? So let's see. There's other definitions. Okay. So in existential philosophy, the word authentic is relating to or denoting an emotionally appropriate, significant, purposive, and responsible mode of human life. Okay, so I like that definition. However, I think that's kind of the opposite of what most people really mean when they try to say authentic. Okay, so before we dive into that, most people, when they say I'm more authentic now, or I am authentic, or I try to be who I actually am, okay? Again, there's no such thing as who you actually are. I'm sorry. That's the hardest thing for a human, especially one who's so wrapped up into the physical world. It's really the opposite of spirituality when people are like, I'm trying to be my true self. It's like someone who understands existential philosophy and epistemology and is really spiritual, right? Whatever the fuck that means. Fucking nebulous term if there was one. Understands that there's really no such thing as a true self. And who you think is a true self is actually what Sigmund Freud called the ego. It's really just the self-image. It's a material understanding of who you think you are in the material world. It is like the opposite of spiritual. It is the opposite of whatever. So anyway, most people, when they say I'm going to be who I really am, I'm going to be my true self or whatever, what they're really just saying is they are no longer going to attempt to try to be something that they're not in order to gain validation from other humans, okay? They're trying to say that they're not going to attach their self-esteem to other people's validation, that they're no longer going to try to mold try to wear different clothes or try to act a certain way in order to gain the approval of other people, okay? And so, yeah, that's a good aim to have. And for me, I've gone to great lengths to detach myself from the opinions of other people, whether it's praise or negativity. Because I believe the best thing you can do is to aim to be functional in society. And the main thing that you need to do to be functional in society, first and foremost, primarily, is to detach yourself from attachment to things that are inherently meaningless. And a big part of that is the opinions of most people. That includes even a lot of your coworkers and and especially strangers and even some acquaintances and close friends. You should consider everybody's criticism, consider everybody's feedback, no matter how negative it might be, as long as it means something, it's not nebulous. Like, for example, there's a difference between someone saying, you are stupid because your choice was dumb. That doesn't mean shit. That is not even, there's no way you can't use that. It's not beneficial. But if someone's like, yeah, your choice of having promiscuous sex with that girl was foolish because you're not compatible with her. If you got her pregnant, then it would have created a pretty toxic relationship, and then that child is born in the world, and then you have something to work with. Then there's references that you can look back on and reflect on and evolve as a human being. But a lot of people, they're just like, they take it to too much of extreme, where they're like, criticism is bad, judgment is bad, people, it's bad to judge, don't be judgmental, don't be critical. And again, that is a fallacy. Like, people who say being judgmental or critical is bad, usually they're not they're not critical thinkers as in and of themselves. And if they were critical thinkers, they would, first of all, understand it's impossible to not judge. It's impossible to not critique. Second of all, they'd understand that criticism and judgment is very functional. There's a reason why human beings naturally judge and critique, and you can't actually escape that. No matter how hard you try to identify as a non-judgmental person, you will always judge because it has survival value and because you are living through your self-image. Okay. So this is a very big fallacy, and it's really a symptom of someone who doesn't think about the things that they think or say. They don't actually reflect. Like, I am authentic, I am non-judgmental, whatever. It's like, clearly you are non-judgmental, because if you actually took the time to judge, to critique, to make some kind of judgment, you would probably judge yourself a little bit and recognize that these things are actually fallacies. So number one, there's no such thing as being authentic or genuine other than being true to your self-image. But your self-image is not your authentic self, your real self. It's not who you are. It's just a pattern of behaviors you've fallen into over the years, and you now see that as who you are naturally. But if you make an effort to change aspects of yourself or your self-image over time, at first it'll feel unnatural. It'll feel fake, and it'll feel efforted. But eventually, you'll actually naturally start to feel that way. For example, people who don't eat healthy and they're fat and overweight, they get imposter syndrome for the first couple months, and then eventually, after seeing themselves in the mirror as a healthy person over and over again, after just kind of over time adapting to a healthy lifestyle and shit like that, eventually start to identify as a healthy and fit person. But it's not natural at first. It doesn't feel authentic at first, and really, to really create any kind of transformation in your mentality, your mental health, your psychology, or just your life in general, to get real self-improvement or self-growth, this is a fundamental thing to understand, is that who you think you are, your real self, your authentic self right now, is subject to change. It's called neuroplasticity. Okay, there is no transcendence of mental health that can happen beyond this. This is actually where true improvements in mental health come from, is from understanding that your self-image is who you identify as, but that's not who you actually are, and who you really are is a kind of dynamic, ever-evolving organism that can literally become something completely different with a little bit of effort and persistence over time. And that's the exact opposite of what most people's definition of authentic is, okay? There's plenty of people, I have friends, for example, who legitimately, they took a medication or something. They used to be really into like death metal, for example, and then the pinch harmonics, they said, started to hurt their ears, and they eventually grew out of death metal. Like some people just say that, I know a lot of people who say as they got older their music tastes changed, for example, right? But a lot of people be like, well, I'm just like being authentic. I'm like dressing more metal and stuff because that's who I am deep down inside. But I didn't want to dress like a metalhead or whatever for a while because I didn't want to offend my family, who is really whatever. It's like, yeah, that's not actually, has nothing to do with who you actually are as a human being. That's such a shallow understanding of like the self, and it just boggles my mind how most people are able to think so shallow and to not like examine deeper these things. I don't know if it's genetics or if it really is just their own like level of evolution, but yeah. So like music taste can completely shift over time. You know what I mean? And that's the first thing. A lot of people think that that's part of their true self is like their musical taste. It's part of your self-image and your current preferences. Okay. So let's see, what's another thing? Like a lot of people identify as antisocial or introverted or whatever, and they have personality tests that try to like fit you into a box of the type of personality that you are in. But the scientific evidence on the subject shows that those things are highly inaccurate, and maybe they're a little bit more relevant than something like a fucking horoscope or something. But even those things are kind of like horoscopes where, like in not horoscopes, but, like astrology charts and shit like that, which I was really into for a while. Basically what can happen, and they've done studies on this, but like where basically somebody can, get a score of like, I don't even know the damn personality scores, but like IBJNF or whatever it is, right? And that's their personality type. And then the more that they start to identify with that, they start to actually create a self-fulfilling prophecy where those personality traits they start to notice more and more. And they kind of like become more of that person that they found out on their personality chart. But the reality is it's not actually who they are. And a lot of people, like they can give you a fake personality chart and you identify with it just because it is assigned to you, and you start to snap your self-image to it, and then you kind of become that because of your identification with it. But they've done studies where they've actually given people the wrong personality chart, the wrong results, and then people they still identify with it, and it creates a placebo effect or a self-fulfilling prophecy where just by the nature of somebody telling you that you are this personality type, the same way that astrology charts would be like, well, you are a Gemini or you are a Virgo. People would be like, oh yeah, that's true. I totally noticed that about myself. When in reality, it's not actually who you fucking are. It's like someone else's diagnosis, someone else's label. And then you take that and you just go with it. Okay? All right, so anyway, I made a lot of videos about this in the past. Chances are the vast majority of people that really need to hear this, I don't know if their IQ is just not high enough, which again, that's another actually toxic thing. I guess I hate that word toxic, but it's not really beneficial even to label people by IQ level, coming from someone who actually had 149 IQ in the second grade, which I now actually realize is really significant. But even then, for years, for 20 years after I was told that, I didn't like to think of myself as someone with such a high IQ because I felt like everybody could develop their intelligence or their patterns of mind and shit. But at the same time, whether it's kind of like your influences or maybe it is your genetic potential, I suppose a lot of people, they, for whatever reason, just don't seem to be capable of thinking on that level. But I don't know why I'm even going down that rabbit hole. Let's kind of get to a practical kind of, well, okay, so if being authentic is not an accurate thing, right? a good goal to strive towards, and what is, okay? Well, first of all, let's look at this existential philosophy definition of authentic, because I kind of like this, okay? In existential philosophy, authenticity, the definition is relating to or denoting an emotionally appropriate, significant, okay, meaningful, purposive, and responsible mode of human life, okay? So I don't know how that's the definition of authentic, but I like that because that's what I think most people should strive towards. Emotionally appropriate, okay? Let's look at that word first of all. Emotionally appropriate. Okay, what does that mean? Well, you can think rational, right? How rational is your emotional response to something? So for example, okay, so a lot of people who are like, yeah, I'm just like my real self, or I'm just real, or I'm authentic, right? Let's say somebody, I don't know, let's say a girl cheats on her husband, or like a woman cheats on her husband or something, okay? First of all, those types of things happen, and interpersonal relationships are extremely complex, right? Obviously cheating it means that your relationship's got to a point where there's serious problems that need to be addressed, either with both parties and their relation and how they relate to each other, or with the woman and her own kind of like maybe childhood trauma or something. Who knows, right? There are a lot of reasons why a female could cheat on a man or whatever, and vice versa. But let's say she says that, right? Let's say that she does that, right? And it's their own personal business. But then some acquaintance in her circle freaks out and like tags her in a freaking status or something on Facebook and calls her out and tries to like expose her and calls her all these names and stuff on social media, okay? So obviously this is something I've seen that actually happen. Not the same exact situation, but it's, not anymore, especially because I delete someone now because it's just, what's the point of having someone like that on your social media? But anyway, I've seen this shit happen, and they're like, if you don't like me calling people out for them being bad people, then, you just don't like real people or something. And it's like, is that emotionally appropriate, to like, first of all, even if they're close family to you, right? Like, to like, take someone's personal business. It's obviously highly complex. There are so many reasons why somebody would have those types of relationship problems, whether it's cheating or fighting, whatever it might be. Those people need maybe professional help, like a psychologist or something. But to like post those things on social media and then you identify as being real, in reality, it's like you're ungrounded, and that's not an appropriate emotional response. You getting triggered by someone else and making a huge like making it even worse, and bringing all their drama. You know what I mean? It's like, what is the point of that? Is that rational? What is the purpose? And that's actually another part of this definition: purposive, right? Significant and meaningful. Okay. Well, what is the meaning behind those actions? What are you intending to create in reality? Okay? And so this is probably a stupid ass example, but like it's something that I thought of because someone who actually identified as being real is like that, where they're just like creating drama and like and meanwhile, I don't want to like go too deep into things, but like, this person's just like, it's just, to me, those are very dysfunctional personality traits. And instead of the word toxic masculinity, whatever, toxic positivity, which is so fucking stupid. Most people could use more toxic positivity in their life, but dysfunctional is a better way to put it, okay? If someone's personality is dysfunctional, it doesn't matter how fucking authentic you are. Here's a fucking gold medal for being an asshole, right? Here's a gold medal for being authentic, when in reality it's a dysfunctional. It doesn't serve a purpose. It's creating negative things in your life and other people's. It doesn't matter. Okay, and conversely, there are people who legitimately are very like their family was maybe was very kind of like conservative and taught their child to hold their emotions inside, or that like they need to be very careful about the things they say, or they might be judged or something like that, right? And maybe they came from a really strict household or something, and they slap their child every time they use a cuss word or said the wrong thing. That's programming that child to be, in a way, kind of keeping everything inside, to be socially hindered and suppressive, and rather than expressive, their child's going to be suppressive and hindered. Okay, and so it's common for these people to identify as like, well, I'm just a introvert naturally, or I'm just really chill, or I'm quiet, or whatever, right? And in reality, these are just kind of like identifications that they put on themselves. But the reality is, like, first of all, do you have anxiety? Do you have social anxiety? Are you truly like happy with your social life? Are you happy with the connections that you do have? Do you have, possibly do you have like a desire, like, man, I wish that I had a wider social circle or something, right? People will try to rationalize it, try to justify it. I'm like, well, I only need like one good friend, and that may be true, right? It's kind of it's not possible to be friends with everyone, so to speak, right? But I think a lot of people, who are on the other extreme, where they're like the complete opposite of the dramatic, crazy person who says they're just real, right? The other people, they're just like, yeah, I just am naturally antisocial or whatever. I just don't get along with people or whatever it might be. A lot of those people actually have dysfunctional kind of like thought patterns and beliefs about society or about friendship or about themselves and other people. And I'm not going to say names, but I have very close people to me that have this issue. And they constantly will try to like reinforce. They try to affirm that they're okay with not having real friends and shit. But even their close kind of like relationships and stuff tend to suffer. But they can't admit it to themselves. And really, they've never actually had fulfilling relationships before. And these are people I know really well, so I can say that. Because you might be like, well, how do you know that they're not fulfilled? Well, I've known them most of my life, right? And they're not actually fulfilled. Okay? And I know this because I have had fulfilling and not fulfilling relationships. I know what they look like, and I know what they're based on. They're based on partly like your true intrinsic values. They're based on how many similarities you have with these people as far as what's actually meaningful on a deep intrinsic level to you, right? Like real values, things you actually really value in life, like critical thinking, self-awareness. Like these are the two values that I'm talking about in this video, right? Anyone who actually will sit down and listen to me talk about these things, they share those two values with me. Because if you didn't, you would have turned the video off because it would have been boring to you. A lot of people, they don't recognize that that's what fulfillment is based on, is literally aligning your life and the people that you surround yourself with as many of these deeply fulfilling and intrinsic characteristics as possible. A lot of the repellingness that you feel from other people is kind of like some kind of disconnect between you and your values and those people and your values a lot of times. But if you recognize your own values and you recognize other people's values and you recognize that that's how you're relating to the world, then you can start to see these things, and it's not a huge deal. So the aim should not be how authentic you are, clearly, based on these like examples. The aim should be to be functional, and what is your intent? What do I want out of life? Do I want fulfilling relationships? Do I want drama? Do I want peace? Do I, people who are like, yeah, like, my authentic self is, being Taoist or Buddhist or whatever. It's like, That doesn't mean shit. Okay? That has nothing to do with like how you relate to the world and how fulfilled you feel. Now, I'll tell you what does matter, okay? It's not like being Christian isn't really the significant thing, but like it's more so, okay, how other people kind of respond to me being Christian, right? If you're the type of person who just wants to like vomit out your beliefs all the time, like, oh yeah, like God is this and God is that, it's like, well, I don't know, how functional is that and what's the purpose of that? But regardless, the big thing is obviously you don't want people to just grill you, right, for your beliefs, right? Like, oh, you're a Christian? Well, what about the dinosaur tracks that were found from, recently? Or, evolution and the science of evolution and this and that. Like, you're dumb or you're this or you're that. Like, clearly that's what really matters to you is like, can you talk about your beliefs and be okay with your beliefs around this person and not feeling like you're walking on eggshells? That's what really matters to you. It's not how Christian you are or how not. Because you should, as a functional human being, you should be able to be Christian and this and that and have friends that are the opposite belief system. Because again, it's not whether you're Christian or they're Christian or not. It's a matter of how do we discuss these beliefs and respond to them emotionally. The biggest flaw a lot of people have is that they are emotionally fragile. And a big part of emotional fragility is how attached you are to your self-image. And because every time someone kind of like criticizes your self-image or judges you for your beliefs or whatever, even if they're nasty, about it, the only reason why you might kind of like your self-image will shatter under that kind of scrutiny because of how attached you are to it, because of how you identify with it. Like you think that that's who I am. And the minute that someone starts to grill that, you take it personally because it's not so much, you don't think of it as, well, they're, first of all, their views are a reflection of who they are, right? Or how they're being. And secondarily, they're criticizing my beliefs or my thoughts. They're criticizing the ideas, right? Not really me as a person, right? And that's a huge defining factor. I think, it's an ad hominem is what that really is. Like, you're a bad person because you're Christian, or you're a bad person because you're atheist, or you're a bad person because you're vegan. It's like, that is kind of meaningless and kind of dysfunctional. So, but a functional criticism or judgment would be criticizing the idea. Like, well, what about this evidence that that's wrong? And, what do you think about, what do you say about believing in something without, adequate evidence, so to speak, or what kind of evidence do you need and this and that? What purpose does it serve in your life? Like, those are functional questions to ask. So anyway, a lot of people are really scared of being judged for how they feel or what they believe or what they think, right? And, that's kind of a dysfunctional thing to be fearful of. A lot of people try to convince themselves they don't care what people think, but the whole thing is like, look, it's okay to not care. It's okay to be hurt by, or it's okay to care. And the sooner that you can, be vulnerable or be okay with people grilling you or judging you, and accepting the possibility that you might be wrong, and accepting the possibility, hey, you might not even know who the fuck you actually are, so to speak, right? And actually, being who you are is actually the fallacy, and that keeps people stuck. All of these things, provided they don't cause an existential crisis, letting go of all of this makes things so much easier. So anyway, the big idea here is no one gives a shit how authentic you are. Okay, what people care about, what you should start caring about is, and you shouldn't care about being authentic per se. What you should care about is, how do I feel in my shoes? How do I feel about my life? How do I feel about the results I'm getting? Okay? If your natural self, and being a female, and people aren't going to like me saying this, but if you're a female, it can be a little bit easier as far as, being authentic per se, because, well, provided you're at least decently attractive, a lot of people will put up with a lot of not so healthy behavior habits just because you might be an attractive female or just because you might be female per se. It is what it is. But like, if you're a man and you have, or just in general, obviously, if you have unhealthy personality traits in general, that is a huge kind of like hit to your results that you're going to get in life, and especially like you're going to have to change that. Okay, no matter what gender or whatever, or anything, you should strive to be as functional as you can in your career. As functional, like you need to strive to change things about yourself that are not actually healthy or good or constructive. You know what I mean? Because like what I was trying to get at with that whole female thing is like, there's a lot of guys who are like, incels or men going their own way. Okay. And like their main problem is that they blame females. They blame females for their relationship problems. This is what I'm trying to get at here. And it bothers me because I recognize like you're giving away responsibility. You're not taking ownership of your flaws as a human being. You're like, oh yeah, girls are bad and girls are this and girls are that and they're all toxic or whatever. Whatever. And that allows, and then, thinking that way allows men to just kind of like give themselves, like justify their lack of relationship success, by saying that girls are the bad ones or some shit like that, right? When in reality, it's not women's fault that you suck at relationships. This really bothers me. And then you have people like, what was that guy, Elliot Rogers, who thinks that way, and then he ends up shooting up a school or whatever it was. And it's an element of narcissism. Like, oh no, it's everyone else's fault but myself, right? I'm just like trying to live an authentic life and be a good human being and this and that, and women don't like me, right? That is such a toxic way of thinking. It's unhealthy. It's dysfunctional. Again, like if who you are being, and clearly Elliot Rogers was not a healthy human, if who you are being is dysfunctional and it's not producing the results you want in life, okay, you cannot expect or rely on the external world to change for you, to yield to your nonsense. If who you're being is not getting the results you want in the external world, that is a sign that who you are needs to fucking change. Your so-called authentic self can suck a dick. It needs to. You need to improve those aspects of yourself that are ruining your success in different areas of your life. So, yeah. This is why I don't like this whole like fat acceptance or whatever it is movement, because being fat and overweight is not healthy. And people need to take ownership of their health, okay? MGTOW, men going their own way, and incels and shit, and even red pill and black pill and all these weird communities are popping up out of nowhere. None of these are really like, I mean, they may help people, but like, they're not the holistic answer. They're not addressing who you are on a fundamental level and transcending and transforming those negative parts of your psychology that are making you emotionally reactive to these things in the first place. Like, the majority of these fuckers that are into these damn groups, MGTOW and Red Pill and shit, they just need to learn how to be a healthy human being. They need to learn where self-esteem or healthy self-esteem comes from and how to navigate the world in a healthy way. Okay? It doesn't matter how authentic you are. It matters how healthy you are. Taking ownership of your negative mistakes and improving the aspects of yourself that are giving less than optimal results. Okay? I kind of went all over the place and made little blurbs about different things, but like, it's like, I don't care what movement you're part of or any of this shit. What I care about is people understanding that they have the power to change and that they need to get over who they think they are. You know, like, oh, I'm authentic, I'm a good person, I'm this, I'm that. Okay? The world doesn't give a fuck. And the sooner that you understand that, per se, the world cares, but you know, the sooner you understand that that you need to, that you have the ability, like you could literally get whatever part of yourself, that whatever aspect of your life that really sucks right now or is not quite there. Whether you want to have a successful YouTube channel, you want to be famous, or you want to just like have a fulfilling life, you just want to have fulfilling relationships, you want like the financial goals or whatever it is, right? Like, people might be personal trainers, for example, and they're like, why are my clients not, doing the things I say and this and that? It's like sometimes other people are having life problems, and that might be it. And it might not be you at all, but a lot of times it might be that something about you as a personal trainer needs to change, needs to evolve, and that's important. But people are like, oh, you just have a different coaching style, you're just not compatible. It's like, yeah, maybe. You know what I mean? There's a degree of compatibility that needs to be involved, but developing your communication skills, your coaching skills, your training skills, whatever skills you need as a human to like be successful in these different areas. Development, self-improvement is the answer. Trying to be more effective human being, a more healthy human being, a more fulfilled human being. That's what matters. Okay? But as long as people are striving to be authentic, striving to not care what people think about me, striving to be non-judgmental, non-critical, whatever. Okay? You're missing the mark. You're lost and going farther and farther off the path. Right? And it's like you'll get a little bit of success doing that, maybe more than other people that aren't even thinking about that. But it's like 25% of the way there. 75% of the way there is where I'm at right now, what I'm talking about. So anyway, leave your question, comments down below. Hopefully this shit made sense. Talk to y'all fucking next time. Fuck.